People have compared him to a left-wing version of you, charismatic, breaking the old rules. What do you think about that?
Well, I think I'm a much better looking person than him, right?
But what if Mamdani becomes mayor?
It's going to be hard for me as the president to give a lot of money to New York because if you have a communist running New York, all you're doing is wasting the money you're sending there. So I don't know that he's won, and I'm not a fan of Cuomo one way or the other, but if it's going to be between a bad Democrat and a communist, I'm going to pick the bad Democrat all the time, to be honest with you.
All right.
Hey, Willie, is Stalin a write-in candidate? You said we got a communist?
Yeah. Well,
yeah, check the paperwork.
We need to
President
check the
Trump
paperwork.
on 60 Minutes this past Sunday threatening to withhold federal funding from New York City in a last-ditch effort to prevent Democratic candidate Zohran Mamdani from winning today's New York City mayoral election. Trump also threw his backing behind independent candidate Andrew Cuomo. And Zohran Mamdani joins us now.
And the communist joins us now. How do you respond to that when somebody comes up to you and says, I can't vote for you because you're a communist?
I say there are reasons you might not want to vote for me, but let's be honest about my politics. I'm a democratic socialist no matter how many times President Trump calls me otherwise.
Yeah, explain the difference. What is the difference between a Democrat, a democratic socialist, and a communist?
Well, I'm a democratic socialist who's also a Democrat.
Right.
And when I say I'm a democratic socialist, I explain it in the words of Dr. King from decades ago, who said that call it democracy or call it democratic socialism, there must be a better distribution of wealth for all of God's children in this country.
Right.
And what I actually find is that when you're speaking to New Yorkers, they ask you less how you describe your politics and more whether there's room for them in that politics.
Right.
And New Yorkers are asking me, does your politics have room for my struggle to afford my rent, my childcare, my groceries? And frankly, President Trump ran an entire campaign focusing on the cost of living, focusing on the promise of cheaper groceries. And his inability to do so is now making him increasingly desperate to try and stop the campaign that will actually deliver on the same diagnosis that he shared.
Yeah, what are you looking for tonight as the election results first come in? What's going to be the key for you to understand early in the evening how you're doing against Andrew Cuomo?
Well, I think the key thing is actually through 9 p.m. because we know that there will be so many New Yorkers who are casting their ballots today. And just as important is we will have thousands, tens of thousands of volunteers who are going to be canvassing today throughout the 5 boroughs. And the reason that I'm sitting in front of you as the Democratic nominee is because this more than 100,000 strong team has been knocking on doors, has been making phone calls, has been making the case to New Yorkers that they don't actually have to continue to live in the most expensive city in the United States of America. We can make this place affordable.
Yeah, and Willie, a lot of endorsements, strange endorsements for Andrew Cuomo, lifelong Democrat, have been sort of rolling in over the past 12 to 24 hours.
Led by President Trump, Elon Musk yesterday also endorsing Andrew Cuomo. And you just told us Stephen Miller has endorsed Andrew Cuomo here at the 11th hour as well. There's no question affordability in this city. Living here is top of everyone's mind. It has gotten obscenely expensive to live here, to do anything here. So you're proposing free grocery stores, free buses, $30 minimum wage, all of which sounds incredible.
Cheaper groceries, not free groceries.
Excuse me, cheaper groceries. But what people want to know is, great, I would love all those things.
Yeah,
how do you pay for it? Who's going to end up footing the bill for those programs?
So I'll answer that question by first explaining some of the endorsements that Andrew Cuomo has received. Elon Musk's endorsement is one of the most expensive endorsements that Andrew Cuomo has ever gotten because it cost him and the state of New York $959 million in tax breaks that he gave Elon Musk years ago when he was the governor of the state. That's actually more money than it would cost to make every bus free in New York City. So I've said clearly that I believe we should tax the top 1% an additional 2%, that's New Yorkers making $1 million or more a year, and have the most profitable corporations pay the same tax rate they do at the top tier in New Jersey, what they would actually pay here in New York. These things together would pay for the entirety of our economic agenda and start to Trump-proof our city. Because as you've said, the endorsements that Andrew Cuomo has got, and this morning he started it by going on Fox and Friends, we're talking about Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Stephen Miller. These are the architects in many ways of the crisis of authoritarianism that New Yorkers are facing. And Andrew Cuomo is so unwilling to tax Donald Trump's billionaire donors because he knows those are the same ones whose checks that he's busy cashing trying to get back to City Hall.
So what do you say, though, on the question of affordability? Let's just take the $30 minimum wage. To the guy who owns the dry cleaner, the woman who owns the nail or hair salon, all these small businesses that you've grown up around and see on your block all the time, say, I can't afford to pay people $30. I'm going to have to either lay people off or close my business. How do you explain that?
Well,
to them?
this would be phased in over a longer period of time for small businesses, as is typically done when you're increasing the minimum wage. And what we've heard in terms of concerns are similar ones we heard when we increased the minimum wage here in New York City before. What it comes back to is the fact that today, to live in this city, you have to already be earning $30 an hour, pretty much. And so if we don't want to pay people that, we're going to lose New Yorkers. I met a man who was working for $11.99 outside of Elmhurst Hospital. He told me he commutes 2 hours every single day to get here because he lives in Pennsylvania, because he can't afford to live in New York City. So I'm going to be there standing up for small businesses. I'm going to make sure the days of bodegas being more regulated than Amazon come to an end. And I'm also going to make sure that the workers of those same small businesses can afford to stay here.
So let's talk a little bit more about the threats from the White House and President Trump. I mean, he's talked about sending the National Guard because he believes the city would be lawless and unsafe under your leadership. But also more concretely, he did it on Truth Social last night as well, beyond the 60 Minutes post, threatening to withhold federal funds. We know he's already slashed the funding for that railway tunnel to New Jersey. What would be the recourse here? We know that any state, any city is dependent, in large part on federal dollars. What would you be able to do at City Hall to combat that?
We have to stop treating everything that Donald Trump says as if it is law just by virtue of the fact that he's saying it. These are threats, many of which go far beyond the actual powers of the presidency. And this is money that New Yorkers are owed. It's not money that we are hoping the president will give us. And we've seen examples across the country where governors, mayors, attorney generals have come together to file lawsuits on behalf of the people that they serve. And in California, the attorney general there estimated that for every dollar they put in legal fees, they recovered more than $30,000 in federal funds that would have otherwise been stripped of them. So we're going to use the courts, we're going to use the bully pulpit, we're going to use every tool at our disposal to stand up for the people of the city.
Right.
If you are successful, and polls say you are, many expect that not only will the president try and cut funds, which you've just answered, but will probably try and do in New York what he did in L.A., Chicago, and want to have a confrontation with you because obviously he wants to use your image toward the midterm elections. How will you handle that without playing into him, but at the same time standing up for the rights of those that are legally here? And how do you unite the people in the city that may or may not have supported you, faith leaders and others, to be part of defending the rights of the city without playing into a confrontation? Secondly, how do you deal with those that are concerned about public safety? You have said that you would keep police commissioner in her place. And how do you, and I don't know if she's responded or not, but how do you let people understand progressivism does not mean that we're not going to have law and order and safety in the city?
I appreciate these questions, Rev, because what they speak to is the fact that New Yorkers deserve safety and justice. They don't have to pick one or the other. And that's what we're going to deliver. We have Commissioner Tisch, who Eric Adams, when he appointed her, he had embedded the upper echelons of the NYPD with corruption and incompetence. And she started to root that out, lowered crime across the 5 boroughs. That'll continue under Mamdani administration, alongside the creation of a Department of Community Safety that will actually be responsible for taking on the mental health crisis and the homelessness crisis. Because when you speak to New Yorkers, these are things that are top of mind. And politicians make us feel as if these are natural parts of living in this city. These are political choices. It was a political choice when Andrew Cuomo cut the funding for a homelessness program when he was the governor. It's a political choice for us to continue having more than 4,200 New Yorkers sleeping on our subway platforms and in our parks. And I look forward to working with the commissioner because, as she said, we do not need the National Guard here. If this was about safety, Donald Trump would have sent the National Guard to the top 8 out of 10 states with the highest crime rates in the country. But they're run by Republicans. So he hasn't done that.
So what's it about?
It's about intimidation.
Right.
He's looking to intimidate people across this country.
You used a phrase that I thought was interesting, that we need to Trump-proof the city. And if you could explain how New Yorkers might be paying more to Trump-proof the city and why they might need to do that.
We have a president who is looking to rip up the very fabric of this city. And that means being ready preemptively for these kinds of threats as opposed to hoping that they don't come to bear. And we have a law department in New York City that used to be one of the most storied law departments in the country. It was on the front lines in fights for equal rights. That department currently has fewer lawyers than it did before the pandemic. We have underfunded so many of the most critical parts of city agency work. That's part of what it means to Trump-proof. The other part of this is, how do we actually stand up for New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs and immigrant New Yorkers. Because right now we have protections in this city. We have a city law that says ICE agents are not allowed into New York City schools unless they have a judicial warrant signed by a judge. But we have a mayor who knows his personal freedom is dependent upon not critiquing the president's immigration agenda. And so there are many parents of children who have no idea that they have this protection. And I've heard from principals that they're seeing at times a decline in attendance because of that fear. So I'm going to stand up for those kids. I'm going to stand up for those parents. I'm going to stand up for the people of the city.
What about concerns we continue to hear from Jewish New Yorkers? Donnie Deutsch comes on the show a good bit. He's concerned. He says rabbis are concerned. I talked to somebody who works with you, Rebecca Katz, who said you actually went to more high holy services in the Jewish holidays than most Jews she knows in New York City herself. She said that as a Jewish woman. And she said you've done everything you can do, but it's never enough. Do you feel that way? Or what do you say this morning to New Yorkers who are Jewish, who won't be voting for you, but will wake up possibly with you as the mayor tomorrow? What do you say to them?
I will look to be their mayor as well. I will look to be the mayor for every Jewish New Yorker, every New Yorker, no matter how they vote, who they vote for, or if they vote, because I'm looking to lead a city of 8.5 million people. And I think it's time that we have a politics that puts the people first, as opposed to a politics that put the self. And it is a responsibility we have in leading the city to ensure it's one that doesn't just root out anti-Semitism, but also celebrates and cherishes Jewish New Yorkers and their place in this city and in the history of the city. It would be an honor to be the mayor.
And Hispanic New Yorkers. What do you say to Hispanic New Yorkers who are afraid to walk the streets because they may be swept up in ICE raids, whether they're American citizens or not? What do you say to them?
I understand their fear. Latino New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs, these are New Yorkers who have told me time and time again that the very neighborhoods they call home are being hollowed out. I've spoken to small business owners who told me that they just don't have the customers they used to. I spoke to a Dominican barbershop owner in Harlem who told me that all of his barbers have status in this country and yet they're still terrified to come to work because they know that ICE has no interest in the law or the people that they're supposed to serve. They're interested, frankly, in intimidation. And I also am proud to be sitting here in large part because of the support of the Latino community. You know, I don't think I would be the Democratic nominee were it not for the fact that we had a majority of Latino support in that primary. And I'm looking forward to continue to build a coalition that looks like the city of New York.
To go back to Joe's previous question, I've talked to Jewish New Yorkers who like your message of affordability. They think it's the right message, but then they go back and they say, well, he supports BDS. He won't condemn the language of globalize the intifada. He seemed to play both sides after October 7th in his initial statement. They're deeply worried that you have some animosity for Jewish people and for the state of Israel. How do you respond to that?
Look, I think critiques of the state of Israel are critiques of a government, as opposed to critiques of a people and of a faith. And my job is to represent every single New Yorker, and I will do so no matter their thoughts and opinions on Israel and Palestine, of which millions of New Yorkers have very strong views, and I'm one of them.
Would BDS be the policy of your administration as mayor?
I've said that I would support and have supported nonviolent movements to bring about compliance with international law. And where this mayor has violated and looked to violate that kind of law, I would bring us back into compliance.
So yes.
No, I'm talking about compliance.
Okay.
Right? And I've said that I support BDS because this is a movement that is looking for that kind of compliance. We haven't seen it.
So there's a crisis in this country, particularly since the pandemic, in education. In teaching young people. New York City public school system is over 1 million kids, which is bigger than most cities in the United States, although it has dropped somewhat in recent years, which in itself is a concern. There have been mayors, both Republican, Bloomberg, and Democrat, de Blasio and others, who have fought for mayoral control. The city would run the school, the mayor would run the schools. But you have said you're not necessarily in support of that. Why? Why give that up?
So I've been critical of the way in which the Adams administration especially has used mayoral control, critical because of the way that it has pushed parents and educators and students out of a deliberative process. I think that the mayor has to be accountable, but what I've heard from too many is that they go to a hearing about the future of a school that their children go to. 8 hours of testimony, child after child, parent after parent, teacher after teacher. Meanwhile, the decision was actually made weeks and months prior, and this is just a mere formality. So my vision is to build a school system that's not only providing excellent quality education that is the envy of the country, but also one where parents and teachers and students see themselves more in the system as opposed to just being subjects of that system.
We had on the show right before you Maria Shriver, who teased me about She did a profile of me 30 years ago when I was a lot more controversial. And it made me think, as I've looked at commercials during this campaign, they've used statements you said, videos that may have been edited. Are there any things you would like to clarify or apologize for? I've had to live and say I was wrong to say that. I didn't mean that. Is there anything you'd like to clear up before people finish voting today? And secondly, can you commit to doing something about the mice? We almost lost Mika this morning. About the mice.
Oh, my God. There was one in here or something.
Oh, I don't think
you know, the days of government considering a problem too small,
Yeah.
those days are coming to an end.
Yeah?
There's
You
no problem
promise?
too small, no crisis too large, because we deserve a city hall that actually cares about every issue that New Yorkers are concerned with. And, you know, I was at Tom's Diner on 112th and Broadway not too long ago, which is right around where I grew up. And as I walked in, a man looked at me from his booth and he said, "You know how I know you're doing well?" I said, "How?" He said, "Because they're lying about you on TV."
Yeah.
And, you know, these more than $40 million in attack ads, you can smear and slander me as much as you want, but New Yorkers are also smart enough to see through that.
Right.
And I'm also proud to say that, you know, much has been made of my age. I think with youth comes two things. One is the arrogance of an innate sense of possibility that I think too often we are losing in our politics. And the other is the humility that you do not know everything. And you must actually surround yourself with those who are experts in the fields that you're looking to deliver on. I think for too long we've had a sense of leadership that pretends as if it is all-knowing, when in fact what a leader is supposed to do is to empower those around them to deliver on the agenda that they ran on. I'm looking forward to being that.
So any statements or any like defunding the police, you obviously don't believe that anymore, right?
Yes, I've said that very clearly.
Said that time and again, right?
That we're not.
Anything to clarify. I mean, I'm not saying you said or did it, but clarify or say maybe I've learned how to be more careful.
By the way, we do this to Rev every time he's on the show, and then Rev will do it to me.
Right.
And we're both apologizing
we
for
do
things
this.
we said years
No,
ago.
I think I've said that you know, the tweets that I wrote in 2020 around defunding the police, that's not the position that I hold. And I'm running for mayor to deliver public safety in partnership with the police department.
Right.
And there's also language that I've used in those same tweets, which I've apologized for to police officers directly.
Okay, it's been a very interesting campaign.
It has.
Closing argument, 30 seconds, go.
Look, if you are happy with the Donald Trump agenda, if you want to see more of Stephen Miller's immigration agenda, if you think that it's right that the richest man in the world is dominating our democracy to the benefit of himself, then by all means, vote for Andrew Cuomo, because those are the men who have endorsed Andrew Cuomo. If you are tired of rent hikes, tired of waiting for buses that never come, tired of thinking of democracy only as an ideal and not something that can deliver on the needs of working people, then this is the campaign for you.
And scene.
All right,
There you
Democratic
go.
nominee
All right.
in the New York City mayoral race, Zohran Mamdani. It's great to have you back on the show. We'll see what happens today.
Thank you so
very
much.
Thank you.
And my apology, I apologize for mispronouncing your name for the past few weeks, but I'm getting better.
It's hard.
Mamdani.
Which camera are we looking at here?
He couldn't do
And,
Brazil.
Andrew, it's not that hard.
Let's do this. Let me tell you, Andrew,
He's doing it right now.
If a guy from the Redneck
doing it
Riviera
on
who
purpose.
fell off a turnip truck outside of 30 Rock a few years ago can say, Mamdani,
There we go.
Hey,
you can do
Just
it
think,
too.
I
Mom.
told him Saturday
Donnie.
at National Action Network, it took me a long time to say Obama right.
Right.
But Obama won twice for president. so-
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, but
Don't
can
worry
you
about it.
spell Brzezinski? That'll be in our next
That's an
Well,
excellent.
we're going to commercial
No
one
one can do it. Still ahead on
first
Morning
scene
Joe.
that
We're
gets
going to
you.
dig into